Good evening, Tigard. Thank you for joining me tonight. If you miss anything, don't worry. We're recording the whole chat and it'll be posted on the city's YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and reference it or you want to watch later, it is available to you. I will provide a couple updates while you all are starting to submit your questions in the chat box. I'd encourage you to do that, both questions or comments. These are meant to be conversational, and we're trying to do that as much as we can via Facebook during COVID. So doing our best there. One update I want to give you about, and some may have seen me communicating and or the city communicating about our city facilities consolidation project. And I've got a couple things I want to share about that. Tigard's a growing city, and our facilities are aging. They're also undersized, and they need very expensive repairs and system replacements. To meet the needs of our community now and into the future, we're considering consolidating city services in 2 new buildings that will save Tigard residents money over time, improve the safety of our facilities, allow us to add some housing, including affordable housing, and to better support a vibrant downtown core in downtown Tigard. I would encourage you on the city's website to, if you want to learn more, we are using the CFC title to help you find that. So City Facilities Consolidation, CFC, and I'd encourage everybody to check that out. The other heads up and reminder I want to give you is about applying now for social service and community event grants. If you're a member of a registered nonprofit providing services to our community, or you know of a community event that's in need of funding, each year the City of Tigard sets aside a small portion of our operating budget to assist agencies whose work aligns with the City Council goals and our city strategic plan. Applications for both the social services and community events grants are being accepted through March 3rd. We've gotten some questions already that came in earlier this week that I will start with as we're hopefully getting questions rolling in and comments. The first is from Chris. Do you support the continued operation of WES? So for those that are not sure what WES is, I will just clarify that is a heavy rail operation that TriMet operates between Wilsonville and Beaverton, and that has operated for probably about 10 years now. I don't know the exact opening date, but somewhere around in that time frame. And the West has struggled to, I think, deliver on a number of its stated goals to begin with, and I've personally, just to be very transparent, been frustrated by the amount of traffic interruption that it has on Durham Road and some other places in Tigard when there are so few riders. With that said, that was a project that started well before I was in a role making or helping to make decisions for our community and in the region as a whole. And my understanding of the requirements of the federal money that was used to build that project is that if it does not operate for the minimum stated time, that hundreds of millions of dollars would be owed back to the federal government. So whether I support its continued operation or not is probably not relevant. I don't think it necessarily is serving a great purpose at this time, but I also, because of the way the federal financial details work out, I don't think that shutting it down now is in the cards, because I don't think anybody locally can afford to pay back what would be required. We have a question from Aaron about the maintenance backlog on our facilities. Are you not using tax dollars to do proper maintenance on facilities? We are absolutely doing both proper maintenance and I would say even preventative maintenance on our facilities. But just like an old vehicle, and I've been using the analogy of like a 1986 Honda Civic, since the building was opened, the current Civic Center building was opened in 1986. I think that's a reasonable analogy. And while you can still do maintenance and even proper maintenance, you still have a 1986 Honda Civic. And that's essentially what we're dealing with at this time. Is not only is it undersized now that we have, as a city we have, let's continue the analogy and say we have 4 children, and we still have our Honda Civic, and it is now 34, 35 years old, and is not getting any younger, and also has a bunch of maintenance and basic issues that, regardless of what you do to the vehicle, let's say you put a new engine in it. Okay, you put a new engine in it, but you're still driving a 1986 Honda Civic. So it's not just about our doing proper maintenance. It's that even with proper maintenance, the facilities remain undersized, and there are frankly a number of things that we've just been told by contractors to stop calling us, stop calling them for it. There's a roof leak in the police department that is of that kind, and the budget committee has heard that in report outs from city leaders for a number of years, and there just aren't good resolutions to these problems. The other interesting thing I would share with the community that I think is important is that if you talk to some of the city leaders, including Tom Bryan as an example, former mayor from that time period and era, who then became Washington County chair and was a state representative for a period of time, they really had to make a lot of choices to kind of do shortcuts to even get the building built in 1986, and so we're kind of feeling those pains now too, because things that maybe might have helped us make it another 5 years, they just couldn't afford to do, even though it was originally in the plan. So that's, if you talk to leaders from a few decades ago, they can share more about that. Let's see, we have a question from Sue. What about all the money that was put into renovating that building when the library moved out? Have we already outgrown the site? So this is, I think, referring to the space that the library occupied before, which is now where the community development department is, and human resources is. There's a number of functions. That space, given that it was built as a library with a whole bunch of open space, is not really ideal for the working conditions. It's also not sized properly for the functions that we have in that space now. And for an extended period of time, there was actually a part of the police department, some of the detectives in the commercial crimes unit were working out of that same space because there was not space for them in the police department proper, nor in the 2 portables that the police department had been using. One of those, I understand, is in a state of unable to be used for more than storage at this point because of its condition. So, we find ourselves in a situation where we've got to decide, okay, are we going to continue putting money towards a very aging facility, and what is the smart decision financially for the next 30 or 40 years? Because we could dump a bunch of money into our current facilities, and yet they still will be undersized and in relatively poor condition 15 or 20 years from now, and then we'd be faced with something even more dire from a financial perspective and still have to spend all the money. The other thing that I think is important to talk about here is that we have an opportunity to construct and resolve our facility challenges right now without raising taxes. We've got a fair bit of information about how we can achieve that, but ultimately this saves taxpayers money over the long run, and we can do it right now without increasing taxes. But part of that is because construction costs are such as they are. If we wait 20 more years, construction costs will be that much higher. So that's another barrier. Let's see. We have a question about East Butte Heritage Park. So we've had a number of communications to the City Council in the last week and a half, number of communications directly to me, both in person. I was up attending a memorial service for a homeless member of our community last Saturday, and somebody walking by who I don't think even knew who exactly was all at the small memorial service that was being held out front of the church stopped by and wanted to talk about this. We indicated that wasn't a great time because we were conducting a memorial, but the point is there are members of the community that are very concerned about what is happening, and just to kind of make sure everybody understands what's changed in that area is that with some CARES Act funding from the federal government that's been allocated to the county is helping to fund a nighttime shelter during COVID that is housed in our community at Rise Church, former site of Calvin Presbyterian. And that's really helpful to us to have in the community. But there's a couple issues with that. One is that during the day, it's not available to our homeless individuals. And so it's also it's not necessarily in an ideal spot where they can easily get to other services. So we're doing what we can around homelessness, but this is just a great example of where even when you're trying to do helpful and useful things, it doesn't always end up as you intend. So we're working with both the Rise Church folks. The Good Neighbor Center is actually operating the shelter at Rise Church, and so there's work being done with both of those entities, and then also with our parks staff and our police staff to figure out how to move this forward. It's actually something that our new city manager, Steve Reimer, gets the opportunity to help with in his first week. So he's learned much more about East Butte Heritage Park than I think he thought he might learn in the first week, but that is what I have to share on that. And let's go to live questions. Do we have any live questions that have come in?
Do have one that came in. It's a little lengthy.
Okay, I'll just read it out so everybody can see it. I'd like to know why the city is actively promoting building a new parking structure in complete defiance of the city's own vision statement, and what is the actual need for more parking, considering that there is never really a shortage of parking in downtown Tigard or surrounding neighborhoods. That is an unnecessary cost that could be easily saved. Also, if the goal is downtown redevelopment, okay, let's take the first part and then we'll come back to the second part. So the question and comment is about parking. So we actually have started to have the beginning of a parking problem in downtown Tigard. It's one of the reasons why there are now 2-hour posted signs in downtown Tigard. That's a newer development in the last 5 years. And there's sort of a natural evolution that happens as downtowns get busier. And right now we don't have people paying for parking downtown. But that's also one of the next steps that you typically would use to manage parking in a downtown core environment. And eventually the city of Tigard will need to do so. That may not be in my time as mayor, but at some point as we progress and there's more and more people downtown, charging for parking, having shorter time frames for parking are all things that need to be done. I am not certain I fully understand the defiance of the city's own vision statement. We certainly want people walking and living interconnected lives and using all kinds of modes of transportation. As a suburban and urban environment, vehicles and cars in particular do still have to be used, and I think the thinking is that having a parking structure that can serve multiple purposes makes sense. And will allow us to condense our footprint. If we needed to keep surface parking, that would leave much less property for redevelopment in downtown, and we, as the city right now, we're the largest property owners in downtown Tigard, which I think has been surprising to a number of people. So I hope that's helpful on the parking side of things. Let's go to the second part of the question. Also, if the goal is downtown redevelopment, why is the city considering building the new city hall on prime land that is walkabout to the city's transit center, which could easily be used for affordable housing while locating the city's services, especially the non-public services, to a less prominent location? So by doing, I think we strongly feel that the city's facility does need to be in an appropriately prominent location in our downtown. But we're talking about going from using 13.5 acres, which were kind of sprawled all over with a bunch of surface parking, down to just a couple of acres, including that parking structure that was being discussed earlier. And so I think our sense is that going from decreasing our footprint sixfold or so is an appropriate use of the space that's left. I guess we could certainly have a discussion, and we are encouraging public input on this, so that's very reasonable input to provide. I will also share that part of what we're trying to do is move city functions that take up a lot of space that don't need to be in a centralized facility and move those elsewhere. So an example of that is Public Works. So Public Works just has a lot of stuff, both equipment, and it's a function that requires space, and that under this plan would no longer be in our downtown area. And right now we're renting a bunch of space for Public Works, and it's all over the place. It's not in one spot, so that's not very efficient. Linda has a question. Have arrests been made from the riot in downtown? Do business owners need more support? So here are updates I have on that, and we can get you a specific, I'll ask staff, Linda, to connect back with you if you want to send them a direct message with your email address. They can certainly answer more specifically about more arrests. I know there was at least one arrest made the night of the vandalism and destruction at the city downtown site, and then also in downtown Tigard. And I don't know whether, I know there were identifications being made through various means with video and other evidence that had been recorded. I just don't know whether the detectives following up on those have been able to locate people and make arrests, but I'm confident that the staff can get back to you with that detail. On the part of Linda's question about do business owners need more support, we have been very direct with business owners about the fact that we want to help them as best we can. The city council, the week after this occurred, set aside resources, money to help downtown business owners, and the last update I had was that about a third of the money we had set aside had been requested to pay for, insurance deductibles, the cost of boarding up, the cost of plywood and other materials people purchase to get prepared. All those things were eligible. I thus far have not heard that any more is needed, and I think that was our goal was to try to make sure that downtown business owners had the support that they needed and was appropriate. All right, so we have a question about Bull Mountain. I was wondering if you could talk about why some portions of West Tigard near Bull Mountain are not part of Tigard. The Tigard boundary is very strange to me. Well, that's an excellent question. The way cities start, takes a vote to create a city, and typically that when the city is first started and chartered, it has a defined boundary, and then there are rules about how and what has to happen for a city to expand its boundaries. And what we have to the west of Tigard in Bull Mountain, in the area around Bull Mountain that you're referring to, is an urban area that is technically in unincorporated Washington County, which means that the sheriff's office is responsible for providing law enforcement services there, though Tigard police go and actually respond to calls up there to help out a fair bit of the time. And they're responsible for providing various other services, roads, etc. It is awkward, I would say, for a variety of reasons from my perspective. One is that many residents on Bull Mountain think they're in Tigard, in the city limits of Tigard. We get people that apply to be on our boards and commissions. They feel like they have a Tigard mailing address and they identify as being Tigard residents, but in fact they're not, and they're not paying city taxes. But sometimes using city services like our library, and that's where things get awkward. The city of Tigard also provides water to that area. There's a free how do I want to describe it? A service district for water up on Bull Mountain called the Tigard Water District. That's its own entity that has its own board of directors. I don't think they really have any staff, and the city of Tigard provides most of the services and support for that delivery of water, but technically it's a special district. That special district is getting smaller and smaller over time as various parcels and property owners annex their properties to the city of Tigard, and that can happen for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons that can happen when someone maybe didn't really want to but ends up being forced to is if they're on a septic system and the county doesn't approve new septic systems and requires that you connect to city services, sewer services, if they're available near your property. So the way things have evolved, that's the story on Bull Mountain for the most part. There was an effort in the early 2000s to annex all of Bull Mountain to the city of Tigard, and that could be an entire half-hour discussion by itself that got very heated, and ultimately I think there were some either legal threats or legal action that ended up resulting in some challenges. And right now we are in the situation we're in, which is that there's a large part of Bull Mountain that is in unincorporated Washington County. Let's see, we got another question. Is the Public Safety Advisory Board meeting now? I don't know if that question means right this moment. The answer to that is no. If the question is about are they meeting currently during the last couple of months, the answer is yes. And the topics they're addressing, I will have staff respond if whoever asked that question can provide their contact information directly to the city in a message on the Facebook page. We'll make sure we get answers to that. But they're actually working through and deciding what they want to prioritize first based on community priorities. And I have specifically chosen not to attend all those meetings really on purpose for a couple different reasons. One, I want the group to feel like they can have those open and honest discussions, and that they don't need a bunch of elected officials from the city conversations tend to be different when a bunch of the city council's in a room, and so that's part of it. I'm trying to be conscious of that. I also feel like the design of the Public Safety Advisory Board probably had more of my imprint on it than any other one individual, and I feel like that's a fairly large amount of influence, and I don't need to influence what I really want to be a community process any further. So I'm not super up on exactly what they did last week or the week before that. Why is the city hiring during a pandemic? That's the next question. So I believe that we have a couple of police officer positions open. I know that. I'm trying to remember what the other
Project engineer.
project engineer. So there's still work happening in engineering, and most of the work done in engineering and in community development is all paid for by the collection of fees from people that are developing properties. So that's a thing where we have to balance the staffing against demand, and if building and construction slows down, then that almost always necessitates either furloughing or laying people off in those areas. So that's not something that's directly funded typically from most of your taxpayer money. Brandy is wondering what the top priorities for the new city manager are. Well, Brandy, the city manager's primary responsibility is to implement the city council's and the city's strategic direction and goals and priorities, and not their own. So in the next couple of weeks or month or so, the new city council, we now have a new member of the city council, will be sitting down and reevaluating where we've been with our council goals for the last 2 years, and setting new ones. So those are going to be some of the city manager's top priorities. I think I already mentioned that he's had some curveballs this week in the form of East Butte Heritage Park, and then there's also a lot of work happening very rapidly on the city facilities consolidation project that I think are demanding some of his attention as well. So those are some of the top ones, but ultimately, again, the city manager's role is and primary responsibility is to implement the city council's goals. Any update on the city budget? What is planned for next year? So we are at the beginning stages of the budget process for the next fiscal year, which starts in July. And what that means right now is that the city manager, actually I think the interim city manager previously, Kathy Nyland, provided instruction to the department directors about the preparation of budgets for this year. Those start to be collated and finalized for then presentation in April and May to the budget committee. There's a number of policy questions and issues that the budget committee will discuss and then ultimately make recommendations to the city council. And the city council then either adjusts or approves the budget. There's some requirements that the city council can't change the budget more than 10% in any one fund, but I don't think I've ever seen it even be close to even 1% in any one fund. So that's typically not an issue, but that's the process. So budget's typically passed in June and becomes effective July 1. And the city's financial budgeting runs from July 1 to June 30th every year. What other questions do we have? Do you know when the COVID vaccine will be available in Tigard? So we've been getting this question quite a bit from, particularly from residents in the Summerfield area, and we've been providing links and resources from the county public health teams. All the major health systems are also combining together to, I think there's been a recognition that it is much more effective to deliver high volumes of vaccines in a centralized location, and so you'll see that Legacy, Providence, OHSU, and Kaiser Permanente have all teamed up for a massive vaccination site at the Oregon Convention Center, and I actually will be there this Saturday, both receiving my second vaccine and also vaccinating people for about 4 hours as a volunteer. I am an employee of one of those health systems, and we are all being encouraged to volunteer. So I don't have more specifics on when the vaccine will be available in Tigard. I know that some pharmacies are starting to get notices that they may be receiving shipments, but how and exactly when those will all be available, I would refer you to Washington County Public Health. Next question, do I know if there have been any commissioners of color in Tigard? I'm going to take that question to mean city councilors, which is what our title is, or mayors. I think that's what's intended by that question. We technically call them city councilors. And I'm trying to think back from city councilors and mayors that I know specifically. We've been working very hard to try to recruit. I personally have spent a lot of time trying to recruit city councilors that would be from more diverse backgrounds, and I even supported a younger black man in the last city council election. He did not end up winning, but there's been a fair bit of work trying to help bring more diverse perspectives to our council. I will also point out that, and this is not in Tigard, but the mayor of King City is an older black man, Ken Gibson, and he is a dear friend of mine and someone that I rely on quite a bit, actually, to give me input on many things. So I guess I could have the staff get back to you on a specific thorough answer to that over a long period of time, because I don't in fact know for sure. I'm pretty certain there's not been a mayor that is a person of color, but I don't know about every city councilor going back to when the city was incorporated in the 1960s. All right, James has a question. Metro passed a payroll tax last year for homeless services. Is there specifics on what services would be provided in Tigard? Great question, James, and something that we're working with the county on. In fact, the cities have all, and the mayors in particular, have been pretty vocal about making sure that the homeless services that are offered with the money that passed in that payroll tax are distributed throughout Washington County and not just in Hillsborough or near the county seat. The South County, so Sherwood, Tigard, Tualatin, King City, and Durham, all, I'll just be honest, at times we feel like we don't always get as many resources conveniently located as other parts of the county. And so we've been pretty vocal about this. I have not seen much more specific detail, but I can tell you that we, the collective group of mayors and city councilors from those jurisdictions, are going to make sure that our share of that money is used to provide services in our communities. All right, we have a question from Robin. Says they grew up in Tigard, family lives there, and I appreciate these live sessions. Okay, Robin, thank you for that feedback and comment. That's excellent. What else do we have? Any other questions or comments? We've got a lower viewing audience tonight than is typical. I know there was a competing event that was, I believe, happening at the Met and that the police department's involved in, so that may be pulling some of our viewership tonight. But certainly want to get to any further questions that you have. And again, want to thank you very much for spending your Thursday evening with me. These are always very productive opportunities for me to hear from all of you. So we'll give you about another 30 seconds, and if you don't submit any further questions or comments, then I will say good night. Do we have anything else, Kent?
No, nothing coming in right now.
No further questions.
We
got one.
Hold up. We got a curveball.
Okay, what do we got?
Tigard City Council President Heidi Lube asks, what is your favorite part of being mayor?
Council President Lou, my favorite part of being mayor. She just didn't want to let me off the hook here any earlier. She better keep coming up with questions if she wants to see this go to 7:30. Let's see. My favorite part. I think I've shared this recently, but I'll share it again. That I really enjoy connecting with people in our community. It's actually part of what has made COVID really hard, though I do get to connect with people by telephone and in this type of venue. But that's by far, I'm a people person, and I really enjoy listening to people, even people that don't agree with me. My wife and many other people think that's a really crazy trait. I think it's kind of important for a mayor or an elected official, period. And I really enjoy that. That's my favorite part, is hearing from people, connecting with them. I also really like, to be honest, connecting and solving difficult problems with creative solutions. And I think as mayor, that's another thing that I get to do. I had a kind of a bizarre example of that in the last week. I had an 84-year-old Tigard resident call me because she didn't know what to do, and her smoke alarm was chirping, and she didn't know how to solve that problem. And it was the middle of my normal work day, so I couldn't just run over there and deal with it. Though sometimes I will admit, I sometimes take that approach to some of these problems. Like, depending on what it is, I'll just go do it if I can. In this case, I couldn't, and I looked at where she lived. She gave me her address, and I was trying to debate, like, do I call, TVFNR, non-emergency, and ask them to kind of go do a public assist, or do I ask maybe the city staff to just send a public works person out? Ultimately, when I looked at where she lived, I realized that there were a number of individuals that I have helped with a problem in their community, and they were all able-bodied adults, and I figured some of them lived like a block or two from her. So I texted the three of them, because we've been in this ongoing conversation for like 2 years about their community problem, and they've appreciated me for helping them with that. And so I said, hey, how about running over to this address and helping this elderly lady with this fire or smoke detector problem? And they took care of it. I just asked, and it was done in an hour. So that's how I guess I offer that as, that's something that brings me joy, that I can connect people like that and figure out creative ways to solve problems. All right, we've got some more questions rolling in. So Council President Lube, you can stand by. You don't need to add any more right now. So Taylor, the city of Tigard cited Timberline Apartments for trash along 109th. Can we get trash cans installed along 109th? Who would I contact to see if we can make this happen? So Taylor, that is a question that I will send to the staff to get a response for you. During these sessions, they take notes. The city recorder actually takes notes and ensures that every follow-up that I indicate or that they sense needs to be done gets done. So Taylor, make sure you provide your contact information in a private message, and we will make sure you get a response to that question from the staff. And did I see another one roll in too?
You skipped over.
What inspired me to run for mayor of Tigard? Wow, that's an interesting question, and I would call it not a single event and more of a journey that started when I moved to Tigard. I've always been, felt some significant sense of duty to my community. I was actually a student board member of the school board in the school district I grew up in, and when I was in high school. So I would say it, things related to being mayor started quite young for me. But when I first moved to Tigard, I decided to serve our community as a reserve police officer. I did that for about 3+ years. And then my wife and I had our first child, and that was, in addition to working full-time, that was not in the cards. But I joined the city budget committee right after that, probably a year or two later, and then became chair of the budget committee. And then I took a small break after we had another child. And then I decided in 2012 to run for city council. And that was a very, there's a very specific thought around that, around, the things I'd done in the community and how I'd been involved, and felt like I wanted to serve as a city councilor. So I did. And then in 2018, when Mayor Cook was not running for re-election, I felt like we were at a pretty critical time in Tigard's history for a whole variety of reasons, and that the right thing for me to do was to run for mayor. So I don't know that it's a single thing that inspired me. It's more like a two and a half decade long sort of involvement in public service in a variety of ways. Do we have any other questions?
We have an important one for you to answer.
Oh, Super Bowl prediction. So I would like to see Kansas City win, but I've also indicated that I think betting against Tom Brady in the postseason is just a bad idea. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, we have a question. We have a question from Amber. When will a decision be made about the increased yard debris pickup proposal?
Okay, Amber is asking about the request from a number of residents to increase the frequency of yard debris disposal, and the next natural time when that will be considered is when we are reviewing our solid waste contracts with the haulers and doing rate setting and telling them what we want them to do. What I will say is that my understanding of just the basic math is that that it would cost everybody a couple dollars more a week for that service, and I'll just be honest, that's concerning with me, or concerning to me, because I don't know how many people would actually use that service. And if you need more yard debris pickup now, it's available. You just have to pay a little bit for it. So from a policy perspective, deciding everybody's going to pay for something that only a few people might use, which is what I worry about, doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to me as the right decision for the overall city. But if 3/4 of the population said, yeah, that's what we want, then of course the city council is going to address that. But I don't think, I don't think that, well, it's, okay, so Amber's got a follow-up, hoping it will be optional. I believe it's optional now. You can contact Pride Disposal and ask for more yard debris service, and you can pay for that and get it. So, Amber, I'm glad that you clarified that. I have a question about how does the city interact with homeowners associations in Tigard? We sometimes get invitations to speak with homeowners associations. Sometimes there are places that are either in the public right away or in some sort of, or are being used by the public that interact with property that the homeowners associations own, and we certainly do have some interaction there, but there's not necessarily a lot of direct interaction. There are leaders of homeowners associations who also serve on our various boards and commissions, and particularly on our Committee for Citizen Engagement, and that's another way, though there's not a direct relationship or a formal relationship between those things, but I do know a number of HOA leaders who serve in those programs. All right, do we have any other questions, or do we need Council President Lube to throw another one in there?
We're up to date right now.
We're up to date. Okay. City of Tigard, you got 30 seconds. And Council President Lube, you've got 15.
We have a question from Russ. He says, good evening, Mayor. Can you explain why the methane odor is so strong this year on Lower Durham near Durham Elementary School?
So there is a wastewater treatment plant that generally, and I actually live in that neighborhood, so I can speak to this with pretty direct experience. There is a wastewater treatment plant there that is one of 3 places that treats wastewater in Washington County, and it's a pretty significant facility. I don't know why it's more smelly this year. We can pose that question to Clean Water Services, who operates that, and I will ask our staff to do so, and they may be able to answer. There's also some construction happening on that site, but I don't think that would be causing it. I will tell you that weather and the direction of certain weather and direction of the wind does have some impact. In my I guess I've lived in that neighborhood now 20 years, full 20 years, and it's something that I only encounter once or twice a year probably on average. So I'd be curious to know what Clean Water Services has to say. In fact, city staff that are taking notes, I would like to be CC'd on that response because I'm curious myself. So we'll get you an answer. If there's something going on with the construction that might make it more stinky for a period of time, maybe when that might end. Again, I wouldn't think that would be the case, but it's possible that there's some impact there of the construction.
Russ says thank you for the response.
You're welcome, Russ. Any other questions or comments, Tiger? All right. Thank you for spending your Thursday night with me. Good night.